of this conversation. My name is Ogbeche Emmanuel. I am a journalist and I'm the chairman of the Nigeria Union of Journalists here in Abuja. Now, the task my group was saddled with is to look at reinventing fiscal governance ecosystem in Nigeria, emerging issues and policy option. And basically, we have had three issues that we looked at. The first was how do we simplify the complexity in revenue and fiscal governance ecosystem. Luckily enough, we had a tax expert, professor in my group, and I'm the least of them, so I was saddled with taking notes. And basically, the first thing is to look at legislation. The group concluded that most of the laws we have regarding revenue taxation, we need to first of all identify the existing laws. When you do that, then you undertake a comprehensive review of the laws with the aim of harmonizing all these laws and all these existing tax and revenue laws so that we can have a balance. Then under that, we also think that it is necessary to centralize revenue collection and administration in this country. There are too many revenue agencies and institutions. So there is need to have a centralized system. And also it means consolidating all revenue collecting agencies into internal revenue services. Basically, let's have the internal revenue services responsible for revenue collection and administration. The issues overlap each other. The second aspect is how do we block leakages effectively amongst non-state actors or entities. And it's our thinking that first of all, you must clearly define the role of revenue consultants. The idea that they are opaque in nature, they are politically tilted, and all of that doesn't help. Then the revenue board should own the database and not the consultants. The idea that database are generated and basically owned by the consultants does not help in the long run in fiscal revenue and fiscal governance. Other aspects we also looked at political interference should be aimed at promoting competence, professionalism, and autonomy in regards to appointments. That has to also do with B, how do we block leakages effectively. Then we also agree that, I'm going further and back now, how do we simplify the complexity? We also said emerging revenue sources like e-commerce should be included into the tax net, particularly the existing laws. We also arrived at the conclusion that there should be mandatory periodic and comprehensive reports, audit report in line with International Public Sector Accounting Standard, IPSAS. And lastly, lifestyle should be taxed. That is, we shouldn't concentrate on chasing small and medium enterprises or business owners. But if you deploy technology to look at the lifestyle of each and every one of us, because we use our ATM cards, we do banking transactions, and through our NIN in particular, if we have a central database with the NIN as the focal point, we should be able to tax the lifestyle of each and every one and increase the tax revenue. If perchance I've left out anything, members of my group will help out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. 3 minutes per presentation. As you can see from group one, group two. Issues that came up were the issue of consultancies and consultants and their sort of hold or their influence on these tax implementation processes. They shouldn't really be in control of the database. Group two also mentioned the issue of political interference. They mentioned issues such as the emerging revenue sources, such as e-commerce that should be looked at and should be taxed. And a controversial one that came up was taxing the lifestyle of citizens. Does anyone have any questions or observations or comments they want to make on that brief presentation, please? Yes, okay.
Thank you very much. So that's my group. I just thought maybe to clarify. So the lifestyle is more around using data for intelligence. So what we're saying is if government can have intelligence to know everyone, whether you're poor, whether you're not poor, whether you're educated or not, we have mobile phones, we make calls. Government can get the data. Those who have bank accounts, government can get the BVN. Those who have land, who register the land, states. You buy cars, who register it, government. People want to travel abroad, they get a passport from government. When they need FX, they buy from CBN through banks. So almost everything you do, right? It's government has it, it's just scattered all over the place. If we can connect everything together, our view is that government can start drawing a line of the vulnerable and poor people and just stop putting more tax burden on them so that the tax burden will be on the people who can afford it. That's where the question of lifestyle comes in. It's not really targeting, taxing people just because they are well-to-do. It's really about data and intelligence. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. Can we give Group 2 a round of applause and thank them for their contribution? Is Group 1 here? Yes. Great. Could we have Group 1 do their presentation, please? And this is for the morning session. Great, sir. Please come forward. Come to the podium. No?
I want to appreciate that Group 1 is making the presentation. Now permit me to invite our volunteer secretary, who has the report in his system, to come and do the presentation on behalf of the group. Abel, please.
Thank you, sir. Just introduce yourself. Introduce yourself. If you can cut it down to like 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah. Just thank you. This is my
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abel. I work with Budget, and I am a member of Group 1. We worked on some questions that have to do with fiscal governance. So I will just quickly run through a few of the suggestions members on the team came up with. So the first challenge we were tasked with is how to improve vertical and horizontal coordination amongst federal government agencies and at different levels of government. And several solutions were proposed. One of the solutions was that there is a need to first and foremost map out the focus areas that we would need for coordination. Do we want to improve coordination in taxation, in budgeting, in planning? What areas do we want to prioritize for improving coordination on the vertical spectrum? And what areas do we want to prioritize on the horizontal spectrum? So there's a need for that mapping. And there's also a need to map out the opportunity cost of weak coordination, so that when communicating with government officials, we can essentially mention numbers to say, oh, sir, this is what this is costing you, and that could prompt them to introduce some reforms. And there is also the recommendation on the team that there's a need to review the different laws that may be influencing coordination at the different level of government. So there's a need for review of those laws, and a recommendation on a need for clear identification of rules and functions of the different government agencies, because the lack of clarity amongst the different agencies is part of why we see some overlaps happening at different points in time. And there's also the recommendation on the encouragement for the group to encourage the National Assembly to continue on their path of constitutional amendment, so they can rationalize the tax system and review the different tax allocation systems we currently operate. So moving on to the second question quickly in the interest of time, we're also tasked with the responsibility of identifying ways to improve tax morale for citizens. Several recommendations came up here. The first is to improve service delivery, as that will motivate citizens to want to pay more. Simplicity of tax collection. There are people who want to pay tax, but the process is very difficult, so there's need for simplification of that process. And there's also a need to introduce transparency and to communicate better with the citizens and the taxpayers. So those are some of the recommendations that came up. And in addition to that, there is the recommendation to adopt a successful model in Kaduna State for participatory budgeting, so that citizens are able to make inputs into what their taxes. Typical months should get a personalized report saying, oh, Mr. XYZ, you paid so amount of money maybe within the last 1 year, and as a result we've been able to, or your taxes contributed to completing this road or completing that project. That gives the taxpayer a sense of belonging. So I will pause here in the interest of time. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You've heard the issues that have been raised by Group 1, and these include review of different laws in regards to better coordination. There seems to be a lack of clarity, which has led to overlap of activities from different agencies. There's a need to encourage National Assembly on the review of the tax regulatory issues that are currently going on. There also needs to be an improvement in terms of service delivery, simplification of paying of taxes, and higher transparency from government as to how these funds that are being raised are spent. And finally, there was the issue of a need to clarify, is it the GDP to, sorry? Tax to GDP figure. Which came up earlier this morning. In regards to tax education, there needs to be more partnership in terms of raising awareness. And finally, it's a recommendation is using behavioral insights to sort of motivate people, to let people understand what their taxes are being spent on. So does anyone have any questions after that presentation for Group 1? No questions? No questions, no questions? If we, sorry sir, it's straightforward. Good. So, applause. Thank you. Good, good, good. Now, the afternoon session, could we have group 1 or group 3 come and do their presentation, please? Group 3? Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Sanusi Ansel. Oh, okay, this one. Hello, okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sanusi Ansel. I'm a policy researcher and writer. I work with Question Marker and a developing consultant firm. Yes, so group 3 and 4 were tasked to review the economic resilience for the afternoon session, the economic resilience of COVID-19 and the policy options. And so we highlighted key issues. One of the key issues we highlighted here was the overdependence on oil and how oil affects non-oil sectors as reflected in the COVID-19 pandemic, where there was a ripple effect because we couldn't sell any other thing and within ourselves or within the country. And so basically our economy crumbled and every other sector suffered. Regarding that, we basically looked at many recommendations. So pushing for more active and productive sectors and state overdependence and working against state overdependence on federal allocation. Also encouraging states to seek comparative advantage approach in state investment and revenue generation. So making the 6 geopolitical zones 6 economic hubs where they could push for economic activities that favor their region best, and that way it works better. So also we looked at supporting MSMEs to survive and sustain the economy. So in that way, the MSMEs will be able to strengthen because they account for the employment of more persons in the labor distance. And so youth inclusion in macroeconomic policy, especially in areas of technology and innovative service delivery. Okay, so reimagining revenue sharing where the regions feed into federal rather than the other way around. So this will help prioritize economic and trade production. Align representation with revenue generation, production, and economy. So that way, governance is directly linked to revenue generation. So if a senator or a representative of a constituency, they'll be thinking about the revenue that their little local government or area will be generating, and that will be connected to their governance. So not just mundane issues like ethnicity or the politics of it, but more on those aspects. So yes. So those are the key. So we also looked at, we asked some of the questions as I asked here in the papers we were given. So we said we should create fiscal social contract to improve economic resilience. So how to expand revenue bases and states. So it's by increasing skills, knowledge and understanding of tax systems, and creating a reliable database that is integrated across different agencies, so they no longer work in silos, and in that way it's coordinated. So investment in physical infrastructure to improve tax collection. One of the group members mentioned that, let's say Kaduna State has about 37 tax collection posts, while some states, let's say Zamfara, has about 7. And you see how that affects the tax collection and the rest. So So also for tech to consider tax for services. So evidence of value tax payment. So from the perspective of taxpayers, they should see that they are paying for services. So if they are paying their taxes, it will be like they are paying for something and they are getting value out for their money. Use traditional and local instruments to improve taxation process. So I think it was mentioned earlier in the morning during the conversations. So we use traditional rulers, use local systems that exist, and use it to strengthen the collection of taxes. So under policy options, we looked at professionalization of the tax system. So out of the tax collectors and all of those things, they should have professional bodies where persons who work within the tax go through professional bodies, and that means the boards and managers have professional bodies under which they are verified. And so to devise strong interagency collaboration to block leakages, detect fraud, and minimize waste. So there should be a formal policy. Where these collaborations exist, they are informal. So to actually make it a formal policy document where they do that. Okay. Another one is ensuring judicious spending and addressing deficiency using policy. Unifying FX policy to harmonize rates with predictable outcomes for investment decisions. Subsidize production rather than consumption. Using policy to subsidize production rather than consumption, and import substitution for the creation of FX surplus. So we'll look at the two main areas where our imports usually go to, which is food and petrochemical stuff. And so if we subsidize, if we substitute those imports and start creating those things within the country, we'll create more surplus FX.
soft copy so that we can all edit, review, and make our input. We want whatever community that we're going to be issuing should be something that at least everybody is happy with. So we don't want to just rush into it. So we're going to make sure that we share with everybody and give a time frame within which everybody should send their feedback. And once we are happy with it, we'll share the final copy